it's Bring Your Podcast to Work Day.
Yeah.
So you brought your children today of the podcast to work, Austin.
Well, you see, the scheduling conflicts of adults are vast because we have to buy things, and to buy things we have to work places. And sometimes we just don't get the time to do what we need to do and what we want to do all in the same time, unless you work at a vape shop and they don't care if you bring your podcast to work today.
There's couches. We're We're just as comfortable right now as we would be at the house.
Yeah, there's literally 3 couches. I argue that we could even be more comfortable.
There's air conditioning in this room.
Watch.
Yes,
I can lay down and cast.
Right.
Is this good?
And you're not bound by
it kind of
cables.
sucks, but I can do it because my head is at a strange angle.
Yeah, I
like
do
it from
enjoy
back
the
here,
air
though.
conditioning.
I bet because it's all like kind of shiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big up on this room from the room we typically record in. This has
That sounds. That sounds.
Tiny is now fully upright again.
So we have
In
erected.
fact, I am erect.
So if we normally record from the grape sack, what is this deemed?
The vape sack.
Vape sack.
The vape sack?
Vape sack.
Grape sack, vape sack.
I like
All right,
that.
I like it.
It's
All
good
right.
because it rhymes.
Coming at live to the 4 of us, but not to any of you, straight from the vape sack.
And possibly live for that guy.
Right.
Hello, customer. Hey, everybody. I'm Dane Holland.
I'm Randy Travis.
I'm K-Dell.
And I'm tiny.
And we are Nerd It to the Grapevine, podcasts where 4 best friends gather weekly to talk about our favorite parts of past, present, and future nerd culture, coming at you from the vape sack from Austin's work. It's Bring Your Podcast to Work Day, and Tiny texted us with, let's talk about this thing, and I was like, that sounds like fun.
Yeah. See, what inspired me is I found a new, and not just new to me, but genre, well, more subgenre of fiction. So the idea was, what genres and subgenres do we like, and which ones do we dislike? You know, because I thought it'd be kind of cool. We can sort of like analyze, you know, and explain what they are.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I recently discovered is called Flintlock Fantasy.
Ooh.
Go on.
So when you think of fantasy, what do you typically think of?
Swords. and
wizards.
knights.
Swords, wizards, elves, dragons, Middle Ages, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what this is at all. I mean, there can be swords and stuff, but there's flintlock pistols, there's rifles. It's more like Industrial Revolution kind of time, 17th, 18th century.
Like right at the tail end of of the night era.
Exactly. So the ones that I have found are by Brian McClellan. He was actually a student of Brandon Sanderson back when he taught school, so that's kind of a tie-in. So the writing style is similar. It's the Powder Mage trilogy. One of the forms of magic is actually involves ingesting gunpowder. Like, that's how it functions. There's other little magic systems in there, but it's a deviation from the normal, which to me it feels refreshing. Even though the plot is kind of convoluted and stuff like that, it's decidedly other from what I'm used to, and I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, that's one thing. Speaking of like a subgenre bringing something refreshing, The Mandalorian really, because it's more of a Western, because it brought that Western feel to Star Wars.
Yeah.
So it was like that too, where it's very refreshing, and it's like this side where you don't get to see it. That's my favorite thing about a lot of the subgenre stuff is it brings a new dimension, a new viewpoint to this thing that you thought of, like, oh, well, maybe a magic system can work like this, or maybe this lore can work like this, and kind of bring that new flavor to it.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, like with this Powder Mage trilogy, there's more of like a give and take with some of the forms of magic. Like the Powder Mages, they can either snort or inhale or eat amounts of gunpowder to actually channel their powers, but at the same time there's a recovery period.
A refractory period, if you will.
They can become addicted to it because it almost gives them a high kind of feel. They call it a powder trance because it enhances all their senses and things. And the drawback is it kind of works like meth. You know,
I was about to say this sounds a lot like cocaine or meth.
Meth mages.
Yeah, it's like
meth mages.
Yeah, it keeps them awake.
Do they defend the Waffle
honed
House?
into things, and so they can push past their limits to the point where they'll just die. So they have to kind of balance it and learn when to use it, how much to use and channel their abilities with it. So it's not just, I have unlimited power.
Well, it's the good kind of magic system where magic has a cost,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And this cost, it involves the thing you're ingesting to make your power work.
Yeah, it's like
Right.
I'm
Pretty neat.
poisoning myself
Right.
to use this
Do they-
if I'd use to excess.
Do they flavor it with anything, or is it just straight up?
Well,
just
it kind of
basically
depends
gunpowder?
person to person. The main character, one of the main characters, is it doesn't give anything away because page 1 there's a coup. Okay, so the army rebels against the king. He's a really piss poor king. Bad things are happening, so they rise up, they kill him, they take over. And Field Marshal Tamas, he at one point he's in a fight, like, and he's an older guy too. He's like mid to late 60s, like probably to the point where he should be thinking about retirement. And now all of a sudden he's leading this country. Well, he has a stash box that looks like a cigar box. So you open it, there's some cigars. But in the butt of them, you bite off the tip, he can take a big old slug of gunpowder, and boom, now he's in a powder trance and can do what he has to. Other than that, he's got like little vials or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so it just kind of varies powder mage to powder mage.
And in a real life scenario of ingesting gunpowder, you would die.
You would die, don't do it.
Right.
But
yeah, please don't.
there is a but in this. There is an athletic supplement that is, of course, illegal. It's called DNT, and it has actual trace amounts of gunpowder in it. And
What?
yeah, and a lot. It's like a secret thing that bodybuilders use sometimes that can't be strict enough on their diet. You know, those that have clearly, gone the way of the cheat day too many times, and they're not getting the success they need for their body fat percentages shredding. And you can lose 2 to 3% of your body fat in a week.
Dang.
That sounds not good.
Yeah,
That
that's
sounds
healthy.
It's
horrible.
not good. You have the chance to by taking it for rupturing your heart. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of taking a medication that will just potentially rupture your heart, but
that's not good.
Yeah, it exists. But for the sake of vanity, or excuse me, greatness, people got to do what you got to do. I kind of like some subgenres of fantasy too that kind of bring the fantasy into a full circle. Because I like some spy shows, which all that is government fantasy. Literally, it's government fantasy. It's there are genres of that make the characters believable, make the stories of where they've been and the things they've done be believable, even though it's all set around fictitious events. It's like the Reacher series, very fictitious,
But they're so good, though.
very fictitious, but so good. And then you can also go really bad with that same thing though, because
like
there's
the Tom Cruise movies.
God, man, there are so many. I wish that people just automatically knew that the CIA were desk jockeys instead of being the people that are out traveling the world as spies, because everybody in the CIA, of course, it's just like, they got to keep it secret. They can't tell you that they really do that. But they literally work desks. They work desk jobs and paperwork, and they
magical desks though, like super secret high tech desks that have like guns and stuff in them.
They might
feel
have
like
they might have a secret compartment to where they can get like a secret bottle of hooch out of it or something. But that's only because they're really sad that they're stuck at the desk.
I feel like there's at least one at every CIA outpost or whatever that when you push a button on his desk, it goes from a sitting desk to a standing desk.
Ooh. More like 009 to 5. Am I right?
It's one of those jobs that looks infinitely cooler on TV than it ever will, because like TV's not very, as a retail worker, there's only been a couple of shows that got retail workers right, but like most of them are close.
Superstore?
Superstore's pretty
Yes,
good.
Superstore. It's office, but for people that haven't worked in an office before,
Right.
It's great, but it's like, yeah, the CIA agents always look. They're like, I am a soldier. I was in the army. I was in Delta Force, and now I'm in the CIA. And I'm gonna like do all these war crimes and stop this in the coup. And then in real life, it's like we're monitoring Discord chats to make sure people don't leak documents. I'm spending time on Reddit on like 4 bot accounts so I can like watch these people. It's just the very exact opposite of cool.
Yeah, they're more analytical.
Yeah,
as opposed to operative. That's but it's a fantasy genre just because
it's like alternate history almost.
Yeah, like Abe Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Oh, so that one is so good. I mean,
yeah,
the movie was not so good.
The movie was awful.
The book, I liked the movie because I can't read.
It's like alternate history horror fantasy. Or
I think the movie was still fun.
It's like the most weirdly well researched history based book that also has bullshit and vampires.
Right.
Like they just took all the bad people and events and centered it around vampires.
Yeah.
And then, sprinkled in some stuff for flavor, like, Henry and various other little aspects.
You mentioned the CIA made me, for whatever reason, think of Sherlock Holmes. I don't know why, but would Sherlock Holmes, some versions of it, be like detective fantasy?
I think that falls under a different genre, more like mystery or like thriller kind of.
I think
because fantasy generally involves some form of magic.
Mystic,
yeah. There's something mystic. Or alternate history falls in under that as well, because usually there's something magical that causes something to deviate, like Stephen King's 11/22/63. That is an alternate history because, he finds a wormhole, goes back in time to stop JFK assassination, but it has historical aspects, but it has that component of magic.
Because the wormhole thing.
Yes.
Right.
So there has to be some kind of component of magic to make it fantasy.
Well, I think the Benedict Cumberbatch TV show version of Sherlock Holmes, which is great. I think it's just called Sherlock.
Yeah.
If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's
I've
super,
heard
super
good
good. But he has this thing called the Mind Palace, and that's a concept or whatever, to where you have everything you've ever known stored in your mind somewhere. It's just a matter of where is it to go find the information. And in it shows him physically seeing himself within this house that's inside of his head, and going through everything. And I think the way that is portrayed made it seem like some kind of like magic power that he has to be able to do that.
It could be like a visualization tool.
Right.
Because I've seen things like that in other books, like Dreamcatcher by Stephen King. One of the characters gets hijacked by alien organism, and so he has to retreat into his mind palace. And for him, it's almost like a warehouse with filing cabinets. So he can pull open the drawer, sift through the papers, and find memories that he didn't even remember that he had. Yeah. So I think it's more of a visualization method than an actual magical form. Right. But I'm not an authority on this. This is just me talking.
Yeah, it's represented like some kind of mystic power, but it's the only way to show you how they're seeing themselves, kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's hard to portray thinking.
Right.
Yeah. So how would you portray that in a visual?
Right.
And that's just a really cool way to do that.
Yeah. I wonder what the actual definition of fantasy is. I've never even looked that up. I'm going to do it now.
We got Google machines.
Because I always lean more towards like sci-fi than fantasy usually, but space fantasy has always been one of my favorites, where it's like, we have elves and dwarves, but also like dwarves live on asteroid colonies, and elves are these like fine sniping.
Well,
like,
they can cross over like Starfinder. It's a tabletop game. It's like elves and dwarves and that fantasy aspect in space. So there's also spaceships and guns and everything. Right. So they can cross over in really cool ways.
Yeah. Although I have to say my favorite sci-fi genre is sci-fi western. Anything with a laser 6-shooter, it just tickles every bone of my like. Things have moved back, or like space pirates, like Treasure Planet.
Yeah,
it's like that kind of stuff. It's like a blended flavor. You don't think it's going to be good, but whenever you have it, it's just perfect.
Right.
Like
well,
that-
just like I thought Flintlock Fantasy was going to be dumb, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But once you experience something different, it just kind of brings a new perspective on just that and things you've experienced in the past.
It almost refreshes your palette
Yes.
because like when you read whenever you're listening to too much of one kind of music and it all starts to sound the same.
Almost like whenever you watch the same kind of anime, they all look the same.
Right. So
Only their names have changed because it's Ezekai and it's all the same.
right.
But it was just
So-
because it was anime.
So sometimes it's nice to like bring something new to the table, like putting in a new spice to the dish. It just refreshes your palate. So eventually you can even go back to what you were watching before because you're able to look at it with a new perspective. You
Absolutely.
have a new, well, what if it's like this or what if it works like that?
Fantasy's pizza, and you can prepare it in all different kinds of
Exactly.
ways.
Right.
And as long as it has pineapple on there, because
You gotta
pineapple
get
belongs
pineapple.
on pizza.
Absolutely.
And
It
I
really
will
does.
fight somebody
Tiny and
on
I
this
both.
hill.
We'll both fight
for
people off
this.
this hill.
I love
I'll beat you
pineapple
off
on
this
pizza.
hill all day, every day.
With both hands.
With both hands to make sure that I get to keep my pineapple on my pizza. Are we going to have to beat you off this hill?
No,
I will beat you off.
no.
this
I
hill
like
right
pineapple
now.
on pizza.
Okay. good.
I love pineapple on pizza.
Excellent.
It's just
So
the
we're
whole
all on
beat-
top of the hill.
The
We're
beating
all in a
off on the
Honda.
hill. That's just,
Right.
Yeah.
For pizza?
Yeah.
Is that a white sauce pizza?
For all of you, for all the audio medium listeners out
Jesus.
there, what you missed was me and Shazam giving each other a very hard, like, you heard that, right? at each other.
Oh, I heard it too.
I don't know what they're talking about.
I
Yeah.
do. I'll explain
we-
it to you after class.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay,
know what, I
excellent.
don't know what you talk about either.
So this random part of Google that I said, what defines the fantasy genre? It says fantasy fiction is a genre of fiction that involves elements that cannot exist within the real world. This fictional universe includes things like magic, mythology, or life from other worlds or universes. And that is according to some random thing. So
if we're
I
going,
mean, that makes sense because,
Yeah.
like, the sci-fi, if you go to the
Right.
bookstore, there's sci-fi / fantasy.
Right.
So sci-fi is technically a genre of fantasy.
yeah.
Well, see,
So that makes sense.
There's this new CIA operative show on Netflix that I love to trash because it's one of the ones that's gotten me absolutely hating that genre. But it was an Arnold Schwarzenegger show. It was called FUBAR. And I've talked about it previously, but I think that it's definitely considered fantasy because the man is 70+ years old. Even in the show, he's in a car, on the top of a car. The car hits a tree. He's thrown 40 feet into the air. He flies into a bush that has like no stopping power for your body, and he's just he's caught by the bush.
Well, what's her
Like,
name?
Yeah, but
Because he's been caught doing this
The
before.
T-100 cannot be killed. If it
That's
didn't
why
fall
his
into
wife
lava,
hates
the
him.
T-100 couldn't. Of course, Arnold couldn't be hurt.
Well, that's the
the
thing.
Governator
He's-
cannot die.
He's not the Terminator. He's just a man.
That's how they get you. Did you not watch the first movie?
No, but he's just a man. He's not a cybernetic skeleton with living tissue over it. He's just a person that's literally going through the actions of the Terminator. Speaking of that, Expendables 4 is coming out real soon.
Oh,
Yes.
I want to watch
No,
all three
thank you.
Expendables. I have all three
No,
of them in
thank
a compilation, and I want to just spend one day. My goal in life is to have a giant collection of all the '80s trash action movies, like Rambo, Predator, like
Whoa!
just all
Don't you
those-
call Predator trash?
No,
okay?
like
I love
trash
that.
as in like Lay's potato chips of movies. They're cheesy, but they're so good.
and not a lot of substance.
There,
okay, I
there's
can go along with
it
that.
is
Definitely.
3 gunfights with 2 dialogues of plot in between.
Okay,
it.
that's Predator.
But
I
that's-
can go with
It's
that.
great. and
But
I
the
love it.
the dialogue on those movies, the one-liners back and forth is all it was. Is like
It was just cheesy one-liners to
just
each other.
like Predator. You got Carl Weathers who played Apollo Creed, and you got Arnold Schwarzenegger who was
son of
Son
a
of- oh, the
bitch.
Predator high five.
like yes, the
Nothing-
Predator high five. You grip and you flex the
The
bicep.
baby old handshake.
And it's just
Nothing
baby
has
old.
more respect between 2 men than if you Predator high five each other. You are brothers at that
But
point.
I feel like you have to grease up first because
Oh,
they
yeah.
were the shiniest of men.
No, it's
So
Sprouts.
only on those
They
arms.
were absolutely baby old up,
if
and it was
it's
hilarious.
if it's between 2 bros, it just sprouts from your skin. It just
Oh, was
you
that
do
it?
it and it just happens.
Oh yeah, the perfect predator shake will actually glisten your arm for you.
You go in dry and
And
you
it's
leave
permanent.
soaking wet.
That arm will never be
It's
dry
Apparently,
again.
I've never achieved that.
It'll always have a thin
Tiny.
layer of baby oil.
Tiny, you son of a bitch!
What's wrong? The CIA have you pushing too many pencils? Let us grip each other's arms
Although
and become moist.
to be fair, Arnold
Moist.
I couldn't stay in Arnold voice and say become moist. I don't know if that's in his. He can say stuff when it comes to cold, but I don't know about moisture.
Tiny, you must moisten it.
Get moist.
You must moisten.
You
Slick
know,
it, make it wet.
Arnold,
glad
how
I'm-
has your skin been so soft? I moisten daily.
I'm just so glad that the word moist doesn't bother me
Speaking-
and doesn't bother any of our listeners. So we'll say it
Speaking
again.
Of the moist
Moist,
governor,
moist.
did you know he's Austrian, right?
Yeah,
Whenever,
knew that.
Yeah, we all knew
whenever
that.
the Terminator was being dubbed for Austria, he actually didn't, even though he can speak the language, they didn't actually let him speak the dub because he has what is considered a southern accent, and they wouldn't think that a robot from the future would sound like a hillbilly, so they had
That's
to
funny.
redub him.
Yeah, he
But
came
I mean,
from.
come on, the whole country's hillbillies. They have kangaroos and everything.
He had. That's Austria.
Austrian, not Australia.
I
Got
hate
him.
you. No, I watched a little. I watched a documentary. I coughed in the eye of the tiger, by the way.
good.
I watched a documentary about Arnold and about the town that he grew up in, and he still goes back to his home every now and then, and he'll stay there just to find some peace of mind, you know. And he's kept it the same way it was, and they were dirt broke. Like, honestly, what he's saying about him being like a southern redneck, like, that's not far from the truth. Like, his family grew up like trailer park style, but in Austria. So to the Austrians, Arnold's speaking in his native tongue sounds about like one of us talking about Sam and Billy down at the Quick Stop.
I'll be back.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
And your Harley Davidson.
Living tissue over
This
meadow
woman-
You
in
got
the
any
Scandal
Copenhagen?
It's one of them Japanese bikes. I can't touch it. Go get your buddy that's got the Harley.
I can't drive one of those ricer bikes. I got I
Our
need
version,
one that sounds like it
Terminator
has a
putting
miss in it.
packing a dip in his lip.
the southern version of that is just the exterminator. And it's just having to take care of like wild raccoons
Hold on.
and possums.
Are
and
you
stuff.
saying that Arnold Schwarzenegger is the Dale Gribble of the movie industry?
100%.
Rest in peace, mighty soldier.
Yes. In
And-
Austria, he is just Dale Gribble.
Speaking of
Sha-sha-sha.
subgenres, a southern horror or southern gothic horror is amazing because it's all just set in Appalachian Mountains
I know,
with Cthulhu.
I wrote one of those.
He did.
Yes. And that is another one of my favorite subgenres because, for one, as someone from the Appalachian region and, you know, just being part of around the smaller town southern vibe, it feels nice seeing my town represented and not just like some big mega city.
Oh, yeah.
And also, it is very true. If you are walking through the woods at night and there's a house, don't go in the house.
Yeah, don't do it.
We all
'cause-
know this. In the southern kids know not to go in the house in the woods, especially if the light's on. Nobody's lived there for 100 years.
Because not only it may not be that there's some eldritch spirit in there, that's probably a meth house, and you're going to get shot.
Like, and yeah, because you're not going to be scared of the woulda, coulda, shouldas of the fantasy realm at that point. As a southern, you're going to be more prone to the actual dangers that are out there. To whereas somebody else, they might see it as, oh, we need to check this out. What if there's ghosts in it?
Don't go on someone else's property. That's how you die.
The only ghosts that are going to be there are yours.
Yes.
Well-
the people that have tried to go in and see what's going on in the past.
If-
Those
Because
are the
if
guys.
you
Well, I
barge
don't-
in the middle of this person's cabin while they're in the middle of their bender,
There's a reason that they're out in the middle of the woods away from everybody.
you have intruded, and they will make an example of you.
And
Well,
it's a 45-minute response time from the police.
One of these days I'll make this statement. Well, I don't know if I'm the only gentleman here that's been 4 miles into the woods in the middle of nowhere. There's not even a Dollar General. Because that's how
that's
we
far
pronounce it from home. Like literally no street lights, no light pollution. It's just you and the crickets. There's a different feeling about it to where when you listen to like a Southern Gothic horror and you hear about the Eldritch God and the green and all this, you can almost feel it and you're like, maybe there's something to that. You know, because it's just a completely different thing.
I mean, granny magic wasn't just made up by us.
Truth.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're out in the middle of the dark, like away from humanity. And so any sound that you hear
It's
or
so
any
loud.
weird, creepy feeling that you get, it's just you're in the unknown. You're in the middle of the unknown.
Especially as it's getting dusk, it taps into that primal urge of like, I need to find shelter, because where I used to drive from high school, there was a back way to go, and through the day it was gorgeous. There's a couple of pull-off places where you can go look at like the water and stuff. At night, you did not stop your car because it was black. There were no street lights. There was probably not going to be another car.
Yeah.
So if you had to stop, it's like, oh shit, I hope I have a light. Or and there's
It's
no
like
cell
you're the
phone
only
service.
person left on the
Yes.
planet. Yeah.
Quick confession. Back whenever I was a sheriff's deputy, I used to smoke cigarettes.
Oh no.
Gross.
Yeah.
You admit that here in this
Austin.
place?
I don't-
in the vape
Are
sack?
Well, you had to start
I thought
somewhere.
You were a good Christian boy.
So the thing about being a sheriff's deputy for the sheriff that I was, that he was so staunchly against cigarettes that he thought it made you look like a lower class citizen. And not because it's bad for your health. No. Don't do that. I care about your health. Don't do that. No, it's like it makes you look like you're white trash to smoke a cigarette. You better not ever do it in uniform. So if he smelled a cigarette on you, or if you were smoking a cigarette and got caught in uniform, like you would get your ass chewed by this guy.
So,
and
physically
not in a
or
good
Did
with
way.
you
words?
smoke cigarettes all the time then on purpose?
No, it wasn't in a good
not
way.
the good one.
Not a good, not a good ass chew. And he
So
wouldn't.
with
He
words.
wouldn't eat my ass. He would.
Oh, okay.
he would.
Difference.
He
Big
would yell
difference,
at me. So I would go and I would find places like what Otto said, because in the county that I'm from, I know the place. I can get places there, so I would just go there. But a lot of the times, it was backcountry cemeteries. I would go during my shift and just pull off at some backcountry cemetery away from everybody, and I would just go lean on a headstone somewhere and smoke me about 8 cigarettes before I got a call, and then I had to go back to my car and spray on some cologne and then be good to go. I stopped buying cologne for the process because it didn't keep the cigarette smell enough off my clothes, so instead I just started spraying myself with Febreze.
You mean you didn't try Axe body spray, because we all know that covers up gross dude funk?
No, because
Oh, no.
because 7th grade me would come back. I have a bottle of Axe body wash at my house.
Oh, you can taste that smell.
It's on reserve, and I've actually pulled it from reserve because I'm almost out of my delicate body soap whip that I use. It's amazing. It's from the Buff City.
Yeah,
Buff
great spot.
City is no longer making this kind of soap whip anymore, so I've got to just keep this tub active as long as possible, and it's now down to the scratchings of it, because you gotta get a little bit of the goop out of the container. You got to lather it up onto your washcloth, and then there you go. You got your soap ready to go. But it's so potent. It's called Breathe. It's got like 4 different mints in it.
I feel like you could make a young adult flintlock fiction. Is that what you call it? Or flintlock fantasy? Is that what you call it?
Flintlock fantasy.
But it's like spraying Axe into your mouth instead of that.
Well,
like
see-
it's different flavors of Axe that you just
Yeah.
use it like a breath freshener, and that's how grade school guys think that they get the superpowers.
oh yeah. Well, you remember Bod?
Oh,
the
dude.
cheaper
yeah.
version of Axe.
Man, I've been a chunky American my entire life, and you watch those bod commercials, and you think, "I want your bod."
Yeah.
Like you think
Yep.
that I'm gonna hose myself down with this musky, fruity spray that smells like you've already sweat in the bottle.
Yeah.
And that's going to make some women want me like they would want these sweaty guys on the show.
Well, not only that, they're like ripped to death on the bottle, and it's like, Mom, I know you love me and you bought this for me for a Christmas present. You realize I'm fat, right? The last thing I want is something that has a shredded guy on it that's called Bod.
And not only is the Axe body wash out of the rotation for it being not used, it's being used now. It is the Phoenix.
Oh, the OG.
The OG.
That's the
OG.
everyone's first axe.
The Phoenix. And I'd forgotten what it smelled like. It had been under my cabinet for a couple years at this point, and I'm like, I'm almost out of this body. I'm almost out of my soap whip. I'm gonna have to use some auxiliary. This will work. I popped it open in the shower and I lathered it up on my scrubber. And I was transported. I was transported to Jinko jeans and Walkman and my Walkman. I was transported to Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Like
Ooh, nostalgia fantasy.
I had
that's what you
so
that's what you had.
Yeah.
so
Nostalgia
my
fantasy.
first
90s
experience
fantasy.
with getting the Axe body wash in the shower and having an Axe body shower wash was a trip back in time, and it was actually really nice.
Imagine the euphoria of chewing 5 gum while also bathing in Axe body wash. What do you think? I would hear the reaction from the other
Climax?
side of the house. Yes, 100%. I can't
sound-
imagine it.
The sound of a PS1 booting up would probably exit my ears.
Yeah.
Like my ears are speakers. My eardrums are the tweeters.
Right.
And it just...
Yeah, I'm a little bit on the younger side. I remember when Axe come out, they used to, every Christmas they would give you a kit that had body wash, deodorant, body spray, like everything in the same scent. And I remember I would scent up. Like if I changed if I changed the shampoo smell, I had to get the body wash and the cologne to match and the deodorant.
Oh, yeah. They had one that was called like, I think like Temptation.
Dark Temptation. It was originally named Chocolate.
Yeah.
And then they changed it to Dark Temptation. But I was more of an Excite guy because it was like cooler. It was purple. But I was in the marching band in high school, and they had to make a rule on the band bus: you're not allowed to spray Axe because whenever,
That's
no
bad.
matter how small of spritz of Axe you do, you will chew on that air until it dissipates. Somehow they have made thick air. Like they have thickening agent for the air for Axe body spray. It's the only way I can describe it because I can taste that flavor. And no matter what spray it is, it all tastes like Febreze and the cheap Febreze.
Well, see, that's part of the deep magic of Axe. You know, that's the Axe should be its own fantasy genre. You know?
Oh yeah, because
I mean, really.
we were all fooling ourselves, and was all a fake world that we were living in, thinking to ourselves that this smells good.
And it caused everyone around us to have Discord. There's a link in the description. You click it, go over there, you can talk to us. I recently released lost video clips on our Discord of our expedition to Standboy Expo 2023.
Oh, I forgot we took
So
videos.
you have to get on there to see them. So click that link. We're on there live, uncut, uncensored, and irrevocably circumcised.
And the only way that we're going to get money to buy more Axe for Austin, since he can't whip himself anymore in the bathtub, since you did say you ran out of your whip, right?
Yeah, I
Okay,
do it.
yeah.
I whip myself pretty good.
You can't whip
it
yourself
real
anymore.
good.
You have to axe yourself. So ask yourself this: how can we give them money to buy Axe body spray and body lotion for Austin?
How can we, Dane?
Patreon is how you do it. Go on Patreon. We got a link in the thing. Go there and say, I want to give you $5. You can do it like $7. And Tab, we got to give Tab a sticker, by the way. We still haven't done that. I got to put him in my car. But yeah, do that. Go to our Patreon, and then you can go buy stuff from the T-shirt spots and stuff too.
Yeah, Redbubble or Teespring.
Yeah.
They're still on there. Just use whichever one you want to.
It's on your bod.
My favorite fantasy is urban fantasy. And
That's good stuff,
it's
too.
it's good stuff because
Explain urban fantasy.
urban fantasy is more like magical stuff happening within a modern day setting. Like most of the time within
Kind
a
of like
city.
how Bright was. If you watch the
Yeah.
Netflix
Bright
movie Bright,
Have I seen Bright?
It was a Will Smith, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a
Yes.
Will Smith. There were orcs and elves,
Pre-Slap
and they were
Smith.
looking for a
yes,
wand.
pre-Slap Smith, but, or AP or AS or
No.
PS.
PS. Yeah,
Pre-slap.
Pre-slap.
PS,
Yeah.
PS and
But,
AS. S.
It's basically like LA, but there's orcs and elves, and it's okay. It has a good concept. I wasn't
Yeah.
too
I
big a fan of
enjoyed
the
it.
series, but I liked the world.
Yeah, it was definitely BSE, the before the slapping era.
Yes.
Yes.
I like the fantasy stuff mixed in with like you mentioned, the Appalachian horror stuff, because it's easier to grab hold of that world and lose yourself within it, because it doesn't take as much imagination to think about being in that situation, right? It's involving magic stuff while you're in the middle of town.
I think that's what
going
made
to
the-
Walmart.
I think that's what made the Harry Potter stuff so relatable and so catchy for everybody, was because it was stories within the Harry Potter world dating back hundreds of years, but all of the actions and everything that's taking place just so happens to be in this magical world that's kept secret from the humans that exist us now.
In modern day.
We just muggles watching our wizard porn.
And you sit there and you think, man, if only I was born British.
That's all it would take.
That's all it would take.
I would have magical powers.
I don't know. That's not something I've ever thought about
French.
thinking. Oh God, not the French.
Oh no.
Well, I mean, I can't remember the wizard school.
Hogwarts.
No, there was Hogwarts. There was Durmstrang, which were like Russian, and then the other one that came for the Triwizard Tournament. They were French.
I'm not familiar.
I don't know.
I
I
just
was
can't
a
remember.
Harry Potter kid.
Well, I can look it up. I've got everything that's ever been said to man. What is it?
A minute.
The Harry Potter.
The schools that showed up for the Triwizard Tournament.
Okay.
I feel like it starts with a L.
What was the Triwizard Tournament again?
It was in book 4, wasn't it?
It was Goblet of Fire that it was in.
That one.
Schools come together and they had a competition to see, basically whose school champions were the best.
It was their competition arc that every anime has around the 40 episode mark.
Bobatons.
Yeah, Bobaton. Yeah, that's
Bobaton.
what it was.
Bobaton,
Well, it was not
Durmstrang,
L at
and
all.
Hogwarts.
Yep. So they were French. Durmstrang was Russian, and then Hogwarts was British.
Interesting.
Or at least that's the kind of feel from
Right.
things that were said.
Huh. That's another neat thing about some of the fantasy books, like with Harry Potter, as the main character is around your age while you're reading it, and the story continues, and there's an actual timeline to where the characters age, and you age with the character.
Well-
It helps you kind of be in that. Well,
Yeah.
and I'm talking about like the height of Harry Potter.
I
and
kinda get that.
Well, see,
most
I didn't
people
get
that read it
that.
when it first
I
came
read
out.
it when I was in my 20s.
Right. Yeah.
But I can definitely see
can get it.
how that would
Yeah.
have been awesome if I'd have read them growing
Right.
up.
I remember that was really big because they were coming out as I was like growing up. Like the movies were coming out as I was like in middle school, like elementary, middle, end of elementary school, early middle school. And I remember it just took everybody by storm. And I had a similar thing with there was a book series I liked in high school called the Legend series. And it was just a 3-part like post-apocalyptic dystopia. And the main character was around my age, so it's almost like I can understand why he's acting like this. Or another one, this author I really like, it's S.G. S.E.
Gibson.
Hinton. S.E. Hinton. She has written the most accurate teenage boy dialogue I've ever read.
Consumed.
Give it a smacking if you want.
That's
There
that.
it
I
is.
earned that
Daddy.
one. My Southern come out. You ever read it? Really, it's really good read if you like it. But it was she would just take a screenshot of like a couple month period in someone's life, and it was the most relatable thing ever. And she'd always write her characters around the like teenage, middle high school era, and that's when I read all of them. And it was just one of those like I can see myself more in that.
Yeah.
So giving that piece of like that subgenre of like, hey, here's something from your daily life, but slightly to the left, just helps grip onto you more.
Oh yeah, I think that's why I liked Animorphs as much as I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
Because it was my age. It was anthropomorphic fantasy, if you want to put a genre to it.
Sure.
You get to experience other people that have something crazy going on, and I walked around going, "Does that guy have a slug in his head? Because he's like he's just a jerk." I can't remember what the slug guys were called.
I remember
but-
the slugs would take over your mind, and then
Yeah.
I'd get that confused with Stargate. And but
Goosebumps was also around
Oh,
the same
yeah.
age characters, right?
yeah, and
I
Beetleborgs.
think it kind of
Ish.
depended book to book.
Did it?
I don't remember a lot about Goosebumps.
Goosebumps
I
had
just
a
remember loving it.
Goosebumps had a couple that genuinely scared me as a kid. There was one about an alien invasion that like genuinely like made me stay up at night. There's like that with a couple of Scooby Doo episodes too. Like
Yeah.
I was just at that right age where my brain was formed enough to where I can recognize of like your life is not a permanent thing, but also I could still believe that vampires could exist.
It's
So,
that weird
like,
middle ground.
I remember there was an episode of Scooby Doo that had a vampire in it, and I was legitimately terrified for like a week. And I didn't tell anybody because I thought it was dumb. Because I was starting to get old enough to where I think I was like maybe 10 or 11. So like I was getting old enough to where it's like you shouldn't be getting scared by TV anymore.
Yeah, well, don't feel bad.
I
Leslie
still get
Nielsen's
scared.
Dracula Dead and Loving It had me sleeping with my head under the blanket with just my nose sticking out.
Oh yeah, that's the most protected way to sleep is just
Also-
under the blanket.
Also, it was a very confusing time because the age that I was at, I was just starting to see the females and go, you know what, they're hot. I like what they got. And you know how it gets that little kind of sexy scene? That was the most horny and terrified I ever was at the same time. Because it was so confusing. Like, this
bet
is,
that totally didn't
this
have
is
any
doing things. Also, I'm terrified.
It changed your brain chemistry and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, no idea.
Little did you know later on down the road that you'd be thinking about how your fantasy of like your fantasy woman and your fantasy terrors can all kind of be mixed into one in these memories. They're all the same emotional field now.
They're like cousins.
I saw this interview with a professional dominatrix, and she said if she knows how old you are in a general like time range, she could find the exact like your exact like kink or whatever because of media you consumed changes and alters how you see that. So media you were consuming around the age of like puberty can actually have an effect on it, and it's so precise and so consistent that she can guess what you're going to be.
I
want to just have a conversation with her now, just to see if she can get it right.
You know,
it was so interesting. I'm like, I want to see. You're curious.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to buy your services. I just want to talk to you and see if you can glean
I
this
want
from
some
what I have to
recommendations.
say.
You know, maybe you know something I
Yeah,
don't.
exactly.
I want to be in this. I want to be in the room just to see the guy that's around my age. For her to turn around and fart in his face while he's tied up, only to smack him in the face and call him an idiot. Like, how did you know? You
just
look like
took
a
a drink.
kid. You look like a kid that would like Ren and Stimpy. Like,
You know me better than myself.
idiot.
We'll have some booger on cheek.
Thank you, ma'am. May I have another?
Oh God.
Earlier, we talked about wanting
That's its
to.
own kind of
We
fantasy.
It does have subgenres. There are subgenres in that fantasy.
That's true.
There are.
We're earning that explicit tag this week.
We mentioned something about us wanting to talk about subgenres that we don't care for, and when I'm looking through a list of subgenres for fantasy, there's not really many that I like, that I don't like, that I generally don't like. I think it all comes down to how hard they go within that genre.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
Sometimes it can be too
anytime
much, though.
Sometimes it can be too much, but also sometimes they can they dial it back to a
there's-
point to where they're trying to do this weird thing to where they don't want to be considered within this same subgenre. It's like we want to make our own thing, but if you don't go hard in a certain direction, sometimes it just feels like you don't have anything of substance.
Yeah, there's a butter zone where you have just enough to make it interesting, but not so much. Because if you don't put enough in there, it just feels like a tacked on, like something to put on the back of the box kind of feel. But if you go too far into it and start explain, because you have to explain the rules as you go, as you're building the world.
Right.
And if there's too many rules, you're cramming too much into one go, and it's almost like you're trying to bend fantasy so much to make it fit into the world that you're breaking the fantasy.
Yeah.
It no longer becomes fun. It's just like, oh, yeah, there's magic, but there's like a laundry list of rules that you have to do.
Well, it also depends on the mood, though, because like the Mistborn trilogy, there's, I want to say, 3 to 4 magic systems, and they're all very detailed. There's very many rules about what does what, and if I'm in that mind frame, I love it. Like, I'm here for it. But if I'm not, it is the most abysmal slog fest I've ever been in.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on where my head's at the time.
And there's also some sloppy uses of magic in certain types of fantasy that I really don't enjoy, like in Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time book series, apparently really, really good book series, from what I'm told.
You can't read.
There we go. The television show, which I can consume because I can't read, they have magic in there, and the magic in there is either you can channel the one power or you can't channel the one power. And then there's all of a sudden in this second season, like everybody having the chance to have this one power. It seems like there's like mages of all sorts coming out of the woodwork now. Just mage. One power user. Well, men can't have the one power because they're corrupted by the dark ones. Well, here's a guy that can use it. Hey, guess what? Here's a guy that can use it. Oh, guess what? There's an ancient legion of these users called I don't know, I can't remember what it's called because it's some kind of stupid the Forgotten or something like that. That show for me is like one of the reasons why people would probably hate magical fantasy, because it's magic without cost. It's magic based on birthright as opposed to you being able to earn it or learn it. It's can or can't.
Well,
and they're even loose on the can or can'ts.
Yeah, I think part of what you're running into with the show versus books is there's 12 books, and you can slow roll in more concepts and ideas, whereas with this TV show, they have to hook you, and they have to get it in there fast because I guarantee you they're not going to get, approval to make enough to cover all 12 of the books.
Oh, they're definitely not.
So they're trying to hit the high points, and so it's like slapdash together.
There's a specific character in it who's I can't remember her name. I actually can remember none of their names except for one, who's the main guy named Rand. The rest of them I don't know. But she's was this wisdom at this village. The wisdom was like the healer. And she didn't really know magic, but she knew the ways of herbs and of the forest and what plants to get and harvest and this and that.
She's a druid.
Yeah, basically.
May the forest be with you.
May the forest be with you. And she then discovers that she has some of the ability to tap into this one power. Well, that some of the ability turns out to be the strongest ability that they've seen in centuries. And the only time you ever see her use this power that's like this overwhelming force is whenever she's screaming and exploding. She's not. No. I'm almost to the end of the second season now, and she still hasn't done jack nor shit with this power besides an emotional rage burst, and then the power explodes out, and that's all that it is. And she's having to rely on everybody else around her because they know how to channel the power and how to use this and that, and she, for some reason, just does big blow-ups, and they don't give a reason for this. It just happens. I have a distaste for that fantasy, so there it is. There, I've said
it. You have a rant, now I got a rant.
Give me rant.
Because, so I've started going through that book, Fourth Wing, It's been all over Book Talk, different booktubers, channels, Everybody's talking about how great this is, and it's a fantasy. What nobody told me is that it's a romance fantasy,
Nice.
And don't get me wrong, I don't care. You can have romance in there, that's fine. It's in just about every kind of fantasy that you're going to read.
Yeah,
somebody's going to fall in love. Where my issue is, you go through, I'm 3/4 of the way through it, and the love aspect is coming in. Like, there's horny dragons, It's
interesting.
You're reading, they're in this school to become dragon riders. They're trying to wield this magical ability. Then all of a sudden, graphic sex scene.
Wait. Okay.
Really?
I have several clarifying questions. Is when they're
think about this very carefully.
Okay, so you said there's.
Are the dragons horny?
Yes. Okay.
Dragon riders.
So I'm going to give you a little taste without
dragon
spoilers.
Riders, what?
Okay, they're flying. They're just like cavalry, but dragons.
Yes.
But so is it like a horse school where people go to learn to ride horses, and then the horses start getting horny?
Okay. Here I'm going to give you a little bit. That's minor spoilers, nothing real crazy.
If this is a book, you're not spoiling anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we have at least one listener.
There's got to be one out there.
Just worry about me.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, they go to the school. Everybody joins the military. You can go what's called a scribe, or infantry, or dragon rider.
Oh,
it follows this chick. She's got I can't remember the name of the disease. You're uber flexible and your joints are brittle. And she goes to be a dragon rider because her mom's this big general in the military. Well, they bond with a dragon. So that dragon chooses you, you ride that dragon, you channel magical ability from said dragon.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you kind of mind link with each other so you can feel each other's emotions.
So like
And
Avatar?
I don't know.
Like Blue People Avatar.
I mean, I've heard that it's kind of like a Dragon Rider's a perm rib, but I've never read that. But basically, she bonds with this dragon who has a mate, and when they have the bond and they're in their head, the two mates are together in the way that mates are together, and she feels the emotions and things, and it
Interesting.
kind of leaches into her life.
So dragons not just be out there, reproducing with the sexual act. Dragons be out there, dolphins style, like having fun with it.
well, no, okay,
no,
it wasn't
it's two
it's two
dragons.
dragons.
But she is
But,
feeling what
those
they're
emotions
feeling.
were bleeding through into her
Yeah.
mind from those two dragons.
Oh,
who
I
were
get that.
mates.
Yeah.
I get that.
It's
All I'm saying,
bestiality adjacent.
Adjacent.
Yeah, all I'm
yeah,
saying
yeah.
is
that's
it's like
And that wasn't even the gross part. That was just
oh,
like
it gets worse.
that part just kind of made sense
Yeah,
just through
yeah.
the lead up.
Okay.
But when she becomes attracted to her dragon's mate's dragon rider,
Have you ever been
That
reading
makes
a piece
sense.
of work and realized that the author had a very specific kink that they're working
yeah,
out?
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's how I was with like part of Rick and Morty. Whenever it gets into like 4th and 5th seasons, there's some stuff in there where it's like, Dan, you're working through some stuff, aren't you, buddy?
Yeah, pretty much. And it was just like, I understand that she was kind of attracted to him from the outset, but at this point, like the emotions from her dragon, she's feeling too, because that they're bonded. They're not of the same mind, but they feels how each other thinks, right?
Yeah.
And so she's got her attraction to her dragon's mate's rider is going to be even more because there's already a basis. Okay, so when they get together and bang one out, it was just kind of out of the blue and very graphic, and I was like, I was not prepared for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, dragons banging off where they're doing, there's no description other than she's experiencing these super intense emotions. And it was just like, come on.
And the
man.
reason I said
Yeah.
dolphins earlier is because of all the animals on the planet that they have to have sex to reproduce, unless you're like a fish and you're laying eggs. Dolphins are the only ones besides humans that do it for pleasure and for fun.
Sharks,
Do they really?
Shark is a dolphin, though.
kind
I
of.
don't
When you think
think
about it,
also
you
have
know, I
two
don't think
sets
they
of
actually-
genitals.
They have
See,
genitals,
I didn't know that.
and
So I can
Two
add that to
sets.
sharks too.
a shark is like a mean dolphin. A dolphin that like works out. A
It's
shark
like
is a dolphin that works
yeah,
out.
older mean cousin.
Yeah.
But so what I'm saying is though, like dragons are also now that as well, to whereas they don't just have sex to reproduce, they have emotions, and there's a sensual nature to it with them.
Yeah, they have wet, slappy fun time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So with that being said in your books and graphic description, that would be a shock because we've not ever had that before told to us, that dragons don't just lay eggs and here's a daddy dragon fertilized that laid egg. It's like
The egg is formed inside of the body after they
Well,
had
I mean,
this
it wasn't
time.
description
Yes.
of the dragons doing it.
The bad
It was
dragon time?
it was descriptions of two humans doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm getting gas on the way to church this morning, and they're starting to do this make out thing, and I'm just kind of like, whatever. So I'm kind of tuning it out, but listening enough to know when it's over, and then I hear the word and I went, what?
Excuse me?
I literally said, what? And then the guy at the pump on the other side was like, what? And I'm like, man, it's the voices in my head. I'm sorry. And he's just like, whatever, man. I'm just going to keep throwing my trash in this trash can.
I feel like that's the difference between a romance book and romance being in a book. Because romance being in a book is normal. It's just like, okay,
Right.
there's like these two people falling in love. A romance book goes into graphic detail out of the blue.
This was straight up
'Cause-
smut with magic.
I have read some romance books of just like I'm perusing, open up the page and just like see it, and there's some stuff in there that I'm like, I'm blushing. Like this is
hold on a minute.
It's mom porn.
Really? Hold on
By
a minute.
that I mean
Yes.
porn
how
for
long,
moms.
How long ago was this book out?
It's a new one.
It's a new one?
Yeah.
Rick and Morty did an episode about dragon riders and the sensual nature of dragon riders. And one of the dragon like tamers that would keep dragons under control had a whip, and it would always slut shame the dragons for being so horny.
Well,
Like it literally would. He would take his magic whip. He was a mage. He would get a magic whip, and he would whip the dragons, and he'd say, "You're a slut dragon. You're just a dirty slut dragon."
I mean, it could have inspired that. I don't know how old the book is. I just know that it's recently making the rounds through the book talk and all that stuff, and they're coming out with a sequel to it.
Oh yeah.
So I know it's not years and years old, but it could
We're
be a
talking
year.
just a couple of years ago with Rick and Morty doing that.
All this talk about slutty dragons makes I have to pee so bad that I'm going to explode. Where can I do that?
You can go to the back into
This
this
way?
hallway and take a left.
I'm going to go do that.
I would take a left and then a right.
talk about
not just
about
a left.
piss fantasy or something.
All right. I'm going to check out a customer while Tiny and Otto talk.
Oh no.
Okay, this is a 2-man cast right
Yeah.
now.
So, Otto, it could be something that you want to read. I don't know.
I don't know. While I don't.
Everything aside from that was so good, though.
That's always the weirdest part is when that's one thing you always run into with like whenever you're parsing genres here, like that subgenre. There's a chance there's gonna be that one thing that just like the step too far in blending the two things together, and it just pulls you out of it. Or the random dragon form.
It'd be one thing if you knew going in,
right?
Because I've read some fantasy romance books before, but I knew going in what I was reading.
It's like a turn signal. You don't have to use it, but I'd much appreciate it if you did.
Yeah, exactly. This just come out of left field. It was
Right.
like I said, the intense emotions thing, feeling it through the bond. Cool, whatever.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But then suddenly, just that word coming out of nowhere, it's jarring, and it makes you go, "What am I reading?"
Yeah, that
I'm like, I guess the super main point that I'm trying to get across is bookstores need to go into subgenres and not just genres. That way, because I'm not saying that that book shouldn't exist or shouldn't have that.
Oh, yeah,
but
like-
you should definitely know going in, and there's
Yeah.
nothing on the back of it that led me to know that was going to take place in there.
That's one thing. I remember I never really got into it, but fan fiction, there's always a part at the top on certain websites that they could give warnings and like break down all the genres on it, so you could kind of know what you were getting into.
Right.
And modern books just really haven't done that because,
No.
like, I'm not saying, again, like you were saying, if you want to put that in your book, it's your book. It's not hurting anybody.
Right.
You do, and especially if it's tastefully done.
Yeah.
you do.
Well, I mean,
but whenever it's just like someone plowed off the interstate going 70 into me sitting there just reading something, then it's like a little much of like, could we not? I need some.
Well, I
heads
mean,
up.
and part of what I guess kind of irked me about it is it's written in a way that a younger person could read it.
Yeah.
So, like when I was a child, I read things way beyond my reading level.
Yes.
So what if like a 10-year-old who is not ready to read something graphic like that and shouldn't read something graphic like that,
Right.
picks it up thinking, "Ooh, school and dragons and warriors and stuff," and then it's
Right.
that. I'm just
As-
saying there should be something to let you know that hey, this is more like a fantasy romance and not just straight up fantasy.
Right, because I really enjoyed young adult. Like that was my real big genre. I liked young adult dystopian fiction. Like
like Hunger Games.
Hunger Games was a big one. The first Divergent book, the rest of them, the Legend series by Mary Lou. Just any book series where it was like, this is your world, but like something's majorly wrong with it. And with young adult, they're writing for that age group of like 13 to like 20. So there's a broad range of stuff, and sometimes you would just be like reading, and then there's like a love scene out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's like I wasn't looking at that. But like it just happens with that, like it's such a gambit, a gamble of like, am I gonna read this and there's gonna be a sex scene or not?
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to be surprised with something if it's not well done or if it at least isn't alluded to the fact that something like that could happen,
Just
because
like in real life.
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like,
it's a
me
jump
first.
scare, but it's a jump sex.
Yeah,
like,
it's-
you got jump
exactly.
sex
I
in the
did.
book.
I did not consent to this. Ask me
Exactly.
first.
I didn't ask while eating a chicken biscuit, pumping my gas, to hear the word
To hear someone else,
And
to hear
there
two
it
dragons
was.
talking about pumping while I'm pumping my gas.
Yeah.
It's like somebody accidentally, well, not accidentally, but somebody, against your will, slipping the word daddy into conversation.
Oh, that
That's
word
a-
is ruined.
That's a nay for me. I don't have that kind of way about me. I don't want you to see me that way. I don't. More power to you daddies out there, but I can't be. That is not me. I cannot be.
Yeah.
So surprise fantasy is not the one for
It's
us.
not
I
the
would
one
say.
for me.
I think
not
we've
about
realized that surprise fantasy is not it. But it must be hard to try to think of your own subgenre whenever you're writing something, because we talk about tropes all the time. And a lot of times when you're creating something, the thought of I don't want to make just something else that's been made.
Right.
And then you try to do something that's different. And it's just, I think that's where the whole high risk, high reward thing comes into play.
Yeah.
Because at some point, all of these subgenres began. Like there was one that started it all, and then now there's all kinds. Like with this Flintlock fantasy, like that could become something that more kind of dabble in.
It's like a branching tree.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, but it's weird whenever authors just try their best to make something totally different and new that fits a subgenre that they created, and it's just not good at all because they're just trying to make this casserole of just random stuff they found in the fridge to make their own thing.
I kind of feel like you're talking about Stephen King's Eyes of the Dragon book, because that was his initial foray into the fantasy genre. And as much as I like the book, it's not a good fantasy book.
Yeah.
And now his Dark Tower series is like a Western fantasy, but it has other elements in because it ties in so many of his books. And Eyes of the Dragon, in one way, ties in way more than I ever wanted it to. Just because of, it's such a deviation from his other works, because you hear Stephen King, you think horror, right? Horror,
Right.
thriller, that sort of thing. And then you're like, so there's this prince and his dad who's a king gets killed, and so he's locked in this tower. Also, all of a sudden, the guy that killed him is an immortal. Also, these are
Interesting.
spoilers.
Right.
But it's
spoiler
so
part,
old.
though.
It come out in the 80s, so if you haven't read it by now, you're not gonna. And it's like, what are this?
I think, and we've talked about the Stephen King on the screen a lot. Of all the genres out there, of all fiction, fantasy has got to be the hardest one to put on screen, because we were talking about magic systems earlier, right? Like with the Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time is an enormous book series. And for you to go, we're going to put this into a 3-4 season TV show.
That's insanity.
It's insanity, because with all this stuff that it's not real life things. It's all made up stuff that you have to explain in a way, at least to a certain extent, that keeps the reader or the watcher invested.
Yeah.
Like you can't just take these high fantasy books, those epic fantasy books, and cram them into a small TV show. If it's a CIA superhero person, that's different. You can do that. Even superhero fantasy, that's a little bit easier to do.
Yeah, it's like you just have to say he has this power, and it's like,
Right.
okay.
Go off on an adventure.
Whereas most fantasy, there's some kind of description. And you can get away with a lore dump in a book, they're here, okay, this is how magic works, and then you move on, and it's over. How do you show that on TV? There's no real way that would actually be interesting.
That's what I was going to bring up, because when you're reading, it's the type of medium you're consuming really sets the rules of what you can and can't pass. Whenever you see Jedi bouncing around on an animation, it makes sense. It looks okay because you're watching an animation. That's okay. Your disbelief is suspended enough. But if you see someone doing that and hopping around and doing a bunch of flips weirdly with no motion on TV live action, it breaks your immersion. In a book, it's understood. There's going to be chat. There could be an entire 3 paragraphs where it's just someone talking, and you just accept it because that's how books are. But if you're watching a TV series and someone spends 3 minutes explaining a magic system, it's lore dump because it's like, give me the quick spark notes of it and then show me. Like, because books, it's all tell me. You can't really show a lot in a book.
You want to show with your words, but literally it is telling you. Yeah.
But on a TV show, it's better to do show me. Show me how the magic system works. Don't just explain to me in a classroom setting.
Well, I think for like TV shows, you'd have to go with like a soft magic system where just very few rules, like, I don't know, like kind of like using the Force. It's there, it's all around us, it penetrates us, it guides us.
Accept it and move on.
Yeah, just concentrate and you can do things with it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, but then you get into something like the Mistborn trilogy where this metal does this metal does that, this third metal does this. You blend these two metals together, it does this other thing. You can't put that on screen because that's going to be the most boring, dull thing. You're going to be like, am I back in school?
And also,
that's what it would feel like.
Learning your alloys and your compositions and other things like that. And like, this one's an element. This one's a...
Well, and to be honest, like even whenever someone is reading books like this, you're not comprehending every single word that's being said.
Right.
You're kind of you're flowing through it. You're getting into a flow. There's some things that maybe you pass by, but it doesn't affect the story really in any way. Now, you can't do that when watching something. Like they can't have, like you said, a 3-minute section of a show or a movie that just like you can just kind of stop paying attention and then pop back in after it, and it's like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's really hard to translate from a fantasy book.
And in a book, there's more room and time because you're going to spend 30, 40 hours on average reading this book. So therefore, you can even slow roll it to where, like, I know this metal's going to keep coming up, and so you're exposed to it enough that you learn, oh, iron pushes, but steel pulls, because you encounter it enough. Whereas TV show, you're going to get, like, 10 episodes a season? You're going to encounter it, but it's not the same. You're not going to get the saturation for it to stick.
Well, and also with a book, you can put a bookmark in it, set it down, and go look up something that you might be like, I'm a little confused by this. How many times have you been watching a movie and you go, all right, I need to pause this because I need to go find out what they're talking about here.
And
you're not that invested. Ever.
Right. That's the difference in audiences because the audience for a TV show is very casual. It's very like...
It's passive.
I'm sitting down. I have 30 spare minutes. I want to watch this and kind of unwind, turn my brain off almost. Not all TV's like that, but a lot of like... these adaptations are like that because just the time slot and the budget they usually have. Whereas with a book, it's more of an understood, like, if you're reading a hard fantasy book, you're the kind of person, like Marcus, he writes notes for his books. As he's reading, he's writing stuff down. And that's what the hard fantasy genre is for. It's for those people that like knowing the small details, like stopping and looking for it. TV's just not for that. TV's for the average person of like just turn it on and kind of half pay attention while I'm doing something else.
Yeah, I see it as like active entertainment and passive entertainment. Reading a book is active entertainment. Like that takes you taking time out of everything else around you and focusing on this one specific thing. And you do get this feeling of I've invested my time that you cannot put a price on into this thing that I'm ingesting. So I want to do the thing to where, okay, I need to go look up what this means with Dune. You start reading Dune, and it's like, oh, man, I need to have a little dictionary for whatever the hell they're talking about. But you want to do that thing if you want to be invested in it. But if you just watch the Dune movie, you can just kind of watch it and just keep going. And if there's some little thing you didn't understand in it, it does still grab your attention. And you can also be on your phone while doing it, or just go to the kitchen and grab something to eat while the thing's still happening.
That's kind of the great thing about audiobooks now, because it's taken it to a place where you can do other things and still consume that thing. Because I've gotten to where I mainly do audiobooks anymore because I'm not supposed to listen to them at work, but none of my bosses listen to this, so I listen to it at work. I'm there for 10 hours. Yeah. I'm not going to listen to the crappy, stupid music that they're playing
Right.
because we have old people. It's all old people, so it's their music.
It's all country.
One day's country, one day is like the worst, like light rock. So I can listen to my book. I can still do my job. I can help people I need to help. I just gotta be sneaky.
And now, is it actual radio stations that you're listening
Yes.
to? Oh God!
Oh,
so
no.
if you're listening to the light
many
rock radio
commercials.
station
For
while
10
you're at
hours, you're
work
hearing
at
every
10
song
hours,
3 times.
Not only that,
No more.
but you're also having to listen to the occasional bout of "It's Still Thy Love."
Oh
Yes.
my God!
No, we listen
I-
to the Eagle and Country Giant.
Oh, okay. Because
Okay.
So do you know how
Okay.
many times I hear that Eagle scream a day?
I don't know
A
how many
lot.
times you drive your car.
Different Eagle. That's a chorus of Eagles. That's music and majesty, not just one very poorly done electronic Eagle.
Yeah.
Just shattering any sanity that I have as it reverberates through the giant factory in which
Tiny's
I work.
having a bad day at work, and he just wants to be left alone. And then all of a sudden, he gets startled by a, and then he starts
Yeah.
breaking everything.
I hit fight or flight once or twice.
Yeah, I listened to the radio a while back because like I was too far out in the boonies, didn't have self service, nothing downloaded on Spotify. And I was like, I'll just listen to the radio. They're all the same. I heard the same ad 5 times just between 4 different stations.
It's all trash. It's all
Yeah.
the most trash songs ever.
And they-
even the ones that were good,
'Cause they
it's
play
played it
'em to
so many
death.
times. Yes,
And we've been living in a lie in the area that we've grown up in here for a long, long time. Because, in all honesty, that taste does not make me say "Olay."
no.
El Tapatio
Oh my-
is
it's
not
the
good
worst.
food. I'm
It's
not even
the
going to say
worst.
good Mexican food. I'm saying it's not good food.
It's F
If,
tier.
if you want something that has no flavor, that's where you go.
And no portions either. You're paying so much for nothing. The rice
Yeah.
is almost white.
Yeah, you get it fast though. That's the only benefit.
Yeah, because they don't season it.
Yeah, I mean, if I want to go somewhere for lunch and I only have 20 minutes, they can get you in and out in 5,
Right.
and it'll take you 3 to eat it.
And I wish that I spoke Spanish better, just so I can talk to the people that are working these places, just so I can ask them, is this really the authentic taste of Mexico? Is this really
It's real Mexico.
is the authentic taste of Mexico? So did they really put water in their ground beef down there, guys? Question.
Is the rice always whiter than all the patrons at this business?
Why is the
Does your-
beef still brown?
Does your cheese dip at home look like skim milk and that's it?
Why is the guacamole just mashed avocados? There's
And
still a
mostly-
chunk in it. They're not even mashed well.
It's mostly brown.
It is. It's like, this is day-old avocados.
We'll never know if that is authentic Mexican, but
Sorry.
you all know that this is authentic podcasting. So thank you everybody for listening to us in the passive / active manner that you have, like an audiobook for us for however long. And then some of you might have even listened to us while you're falling asleep. When you wake up in the morning and you go on social media to waste away, the first hour of your day,
It's called doom scrolling.
doom scroll into Facebook, Instagram, and stuff. We're on there at Nerd Grapevine. Just go find us wherever you're at. And I had a fun fantasy time with everyone this evening.
It was fantastic.
It was
Oh,
fantastic.
it was fantastic.
And if this is your first time, we want to say welcome to the Backyard Bonanza. You don't know what that means, but one day
One day you will.
will.
If you follow Tiny's orders earlier of going on Discord, you'll know exactly what the
You'll know
Backyard Bonanza
exactly.
is.
Learn about the nerd lore, the Nerd It Through the Grapevine deep lore.
And just like with all the Fast and Furious movies and Olive Garden, when you're here, your family.
And you'll get the runs.
Yes. And just remember, at whatever fantasy your mind is coming up with, just think, what if life were to give me grapes?
Into my butt.
And what if life gave me grapes in my butt? What would I do?
Let us grip each other's arms
Although
and become moist.
to be fair, Arnold
Moist.